perimenopause in a lot of ways is almost laughable, because why would our brains remodel without permission during a time where we're really having to hold it all together for everybody, right? All the priorities, the obligations, family members, the household, everything is, we're just holding all of that up. Having a conversation with your doctor, asking if HRT is on the table as a practitioner, being open to bringing it up, saying, hey, could this be perimenopause? Could we be looking at your labs in a more meaningful way? But at the crux of a lot of it, I think when it comes to the brain-related symptoms and changes, we need to really be looking at a woman's metabolic health as well. Like, how is her blood sugar? What is going on with inflammation? Is there anything that we can control from that standpoint?
Today, we're joined by Dr. Mariza Snyder, an expert in hormones and the author of the Perimenopause Revolution. She's a leading voice in women's health and energy optimization. For over a decade, Dr. Mariza has helped women reclaim their vitality through simple, science-backed lifestyle shifts, from balancing cortisol and supporting thyroid health to mastering the art of cyclical living. In this conversation, we'll dive into how women can thrive, not just survive, through every hormonal transition, and the daily habits that unlock lasting energy, confidence, and balance. Welcome, Dr. Mariza. We are so happy to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You've written such an important, milestone book. And I think you're ahead of the curve, and I can't wait to hear more about it. So I'd love for you to share with our audience your story and how you got into talking about perimenopause and how it's impacted you and what inspired you to write the book. And then, what can we take away as well? We'll dive into all of it.
I love this question. When I walked into clinical practice back in 2010, my mom was 48 years old, and she had been going through perimenopause. But like so many women, even today, fast forward to 2025, women in their early 40s or even in their mid 40s who are still cycling pretty regularly, they're often told or they're misdiagnosed as, oh, this is just depression or anxiety, or you're just tired or you're overextended. So that was a lot of what my mother was getting when she was going to her doctor's office. But then by the time she was 48 years old, it was, send me a sign, make it impossible for me to miss. And it was the crime scene periods that she was experiencing at that point, but also sleep issues and not having good mental energy or physical energy. But more importantly, it was the mood swings. At one point she went to her doctor and asked, is it normal for me to want to kill people 5 days out of the month? And, because she was having really severe perimenopausal rage and PMD, potentially maybe PMDD leading into that, but definitely these bouts of rage. And she was told and validated that, yes, that was normal, but then wasn't really given anything to support her in the journey and kind of just left her own devices.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah. And, I appreciated the fact that she was validated in that moment, but then there was no real solution for her. And my mom finally came to me, I remember getting a call at 11 o'clock at night, and my mom was really scared about what she was feeling, what she was experiencing. She just felt like she was untethered, and I ended up taking over her care. And I was so deeply grateful for that front row seat, because I had so many women in my own practice that were in midlife that were experiencing a number of different symptoms. They were being siloed to their cardiologist, to their endocrinologist, all over the place, being recommended prescriptions, and no one really connecting the dots between what was going on with her. Was this perimenopause? Was this menopause? Was it her hormones? And we weren't seeing the full picture. And it was in that moment, and I was dealing with my own hormone issues at the time. It wasn't perimenopause yet. I was like barely 30 years old, but I was also struggling with my own issues. And I thought, ooh, like, is that coming for me? And also, I realized that it felt like we were failing women left and right in terms of connecting the dots in terms of root cause medicine. And so fast forward to 43 years old, I'm literally just out of postpartum by a little over 2 years. And postpartum was its own journey, especially at 40, 41, 42, and so I've got this 5-month runway where everything is feeling pretty good. I'm finally sleeping good. I have got good energy. I'm working out. I'm feeling resilient. I ran all of the biomarkers.
You bounced back after baby.
My cycle is back finally. It had just come back 5 months prior. entire, it took about a year, almost a year and a half to get my cycle back. And I'm thinking I've got a little bit more runway, you know, and I'm kind of thinking I'm pushing perimenopause back in terms of reproductive longevity.
Right.
And then 5 months later, I just get this Mack truck moment. And it was a lot of the brain-related symptoms that we start to see with declining progesterone levels.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I don't know if my progesterone ever even bounced back at all.
Right.
I'm not sure. But I was really struggling with a lack of word recall, cognitive changes, low mental energy, and then also the mood changes. Like all of a sudden, it felt like I just didn't feel like myself anymore. And it was in that moment where I was kind of figuring out, is this low thyroid function? Is this my Hashimoto's flaring up again? Is this deregulated stress response system? It was so funny. I was like, what is it? Is it any of these things? And it's often for so many women in perimenopause, and I think that's why it's such a moving target, is it's usually a yes and.
Yes.
Usually it's perimenopause and
underlying issues.
Underlying issues that maybe we were holding off, you know, up until a certain point, until that protective shield, those hormones.
Keeping them all at bay.
Exactly.
And then it's like the dam breaks and it's like. Whoosh.
Everything's up for review. Yeah. And all of those symptoms start to present.
Yeah.
And so that was my initial perimenopausal experience. And I knew in that moment that if I was having a hard time deciphering what was going on with me, I thought, how many millions of women are trying to figure out what is happening? And that's when I knew I needed to write the book, The Perimenopause Revolution, because we deserve a roadmap to navigate this profound transition that I don't feel it gets enough attention and is not recognized for the silent shifts that it brings to the table that can be so destabilizing for women as they move into menopause and beyond.
Yeah. Do you want to share what some of those silent shifts are, you know, for our audience? Our audience is practitioner, but also, you know, wellness warriors. So,
I love
you know,
it.
and I think a lot of people don't know what to expect. You know, now it's becoming very popular to talk about on Instagram and social. But what does the beginning of perimenopause look like for some women? You know, how can it present? And like you said, it can be many different things. And that's what makes it a little bit nebulous.
Yes.
But there's probably some very specific things that people can look out for.
Yeah, I want to start with the symptoms first, especially in early peri, because I think we understand what late perimenopause looks like, right? That's when we are skipping those periods. That's when the menstrual cycle changes are very apparent. That's when we're having maybe the crime scene periods and the hot flashes, the night sweats, the low libido, what we always categorized perimenopause as, those very classic symptoms. And I'd argue a lot of those classic symptoms are really late perimenopause. Like if we look at the CDC, they say that perimenopause happens at 47 years old.
Wow.
And I'm like, and that makes sense if we're only thinking that perimenopause was late perimenopause. Right. The early perimenopause and even late reproductive stage, because we know that women are losing progesterone even before, I feel like
in their late 30s.
Yes, in their late 30s or even in their mid 30s.
Yeah.
You know, if natural menopause can happen anywhere between 45 and 55 years old, average menopause being 51, well, let's reverse engineer that profound transition that's 4 to 10 plus years. Now we're looking at mid to late 30s for some women, depending on kind of where they land in terms of their egg supply. And so those initial symptoms, I find it can be low stress tolerance, PMS symptoms. A lot of them are cyclical. So a lot of the Luteal-Phase type symptoms are just exacerbated. So sleep issues. And so I always tell women it's so important for you to track your menstrual cycle, particularly in perimenopause. And even as a practitioner, to be asking your patients to do so, to see, do you notice symptoms that track along your cycle?
Does it correlate?
Yeah, does it correlate? Are you okay in that follicular phase, but all of a sudden the luteal phase just feels more intense, more rough, or like elongated, like maybe PMS symptoms were originally only 2 to 3 days and now they're like 5 to 7 days, you know? So what are we noticing? And that's how I knew I was in perimenopause. I was having rage. Day 22, like clockwork, 3 months in a row. And I was like, well, this is clear. And it is a clinical diagnosis based on symptoms. And so I always tell my patients, I want you to be looking at your menstrual cycle. I want you to be looking at your symptoms along your menstrual cycle. And then also your age.
Yeah.
Your age is going to probably be a good indicator of where you're at. And so, if I had looked at those in that type of framework when I was going through perimenopause those first couple of months, I checked all those boxes.
Right.
I was like, oh, symptoms around my cycle and 43 years old.
Yeah.
I can just do the math and all of a sudden we're there. But it's the silent shifts that I'm most concerned about. So a big part of the book, it talks about the metabolic inflection point or the metabolic storm that is developing, particularly in perimenopause.
Yes.
So I'm looking at biomarkers in a really meaningful way. I'm looking at fasting insulin. I'm looking at cardiovascular markers, not just the typical lipids, but ApoB, lipoprotein little a, homocysteine, sed rate. I'm also looking at fibrinogen. I want to see what is there inflammation in the vascular walls. I am also particularly looking at and interested in nutrient deficiencies, even things like vitamin D, magnesium, folate, B vitamins, because I want to see if there's any changes happening at a cellular level. Right. But I notice creeping blood pressure in perimenopause. I notice insulin resistance in perimenopause. Obviously, body composition changes that begin to happen. We know that bone loss begins to take place we can lose up to 20% of bone by the time we're in early menopause. That's a lot of bone loss.
It's drastic.
Yeah, it's drastic. And that's happening not in postmenopause. We're talking perimenopause. Muscle loss, inflammation, particularly neuroinflammation that I want to be aware of. And so a lot of these shifts, we're kind of writing them off as, oh, this is aging, or, oh, this is just perimenopause. This is just a zone of chaos. But when I look at women in their 40s and then in their 50s and 60s, I'm noticing that the symptoms that they're experiencing in their 40s, it is a predictor of future health outcomes down the road. And so I think it's important for us to not consider perimenopause just this time where we're having these types of these symptoms are a nuisance. Yeah. This is just a chaotic moment in your life. But looking at these symptoms in a more meaningful way as the potential for cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration, bone loss, osteoporosis. We know that 1 in 2 women are going to have an osteoporotic fracture by the time they're in their 80s. Right. And so we need to be looking at a lot of this information in a more meaningful way as women are navigating this transition.
Yeah. Yeah, I think to your point, when I speak to my patients, they never want to end up in the same health that their moms have. And I think that, the generation of, my mother, our mothers, huge disservice to them because they were just kind of pushed away. Like, this is just a normal transition, nothing to do. And then now, they're in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and they're sarcopenic. They've never lifted weights, and they all have osteoporosis.
Yeah.
And heart disease. So, yeah, I mean, I do think that it's an inflection point and that it's important for women who are in this stage to really take advantage of the opportunity we have to make meaningful changes so that our 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond can be, as wonderful as possible.
Yeah, it's a reframe.
Yeah.
It is a mindset reframe.
Yeah.
I think about our mothers or our grandmothers or aunts, the women that are in their maybe 60s, 70s, and 80s, and how they were told that 1, women suffer. Yeah. And 2, this is the beginning of a decline. Yeah. And that there's not a lot that you can do about it. So I think that there was this prevailing narrative that we are finally beginning to dispel or shift that tells women that there's not a lot.
Yeah,
there's not a lot to do at this point. Yeah. And that's so far from the truth. Yeah. And so that's what I'm really excited about, particularly not with this book, but also just changing the conversation about perimenopause and menopause to being more about health optimization and longevity. Yeah. That's what we're talking about. And so I want women to know that, number 1, they are not broken. Right. That they are just in a very profound transition, but that their bodies are calling for a new level of support. Yeah. That there is so much that we can do, that we can be strategic about our health. Yeah. Number 2, I always want women to understand that this is the window of vulnerability. And if you're feeling that in your body, if you're saying to yourself, I don't feel like myself anymore, I know something is shifting, trust that. Trust that your body is signaling, indicating, communicating with you that it's time to level up and be a bit more strategic. Yeah. And then that there's a distinct difference between blaming ourselves, which doesn't get us anywhere. And I know that is a lot of what so often women have heard from society, that this is your fault, you are broken. we're not, and it's not our fault. There's a distinct difference between blaming ourselves and ownership. And I think that's where we get to change the conversation, is that we get to own the second half of our lives.
Right.
We get to own what is happening with our bodies. We get to be resilient. We get to build strength. We get to look at our biomarkers and our data in a really meaningful way and make real-time changes based on that. Like, I believe that we're entering a world of bioobservability where we can look at this information in a very meaningful way, whether it's from a continuous glucose monitor or it's your Oura ring or it's a Whoop, you know, and taking that information and making real-time changes based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, 20 years ago, this wasn't possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some low-hanging fruit for people who are, you know, wanting to support themselves? I know the book obviously will have a lot of the information. Everyone should read it. It's so pretty.
It is so pretty. I am so in love with the cover. Yeah. I always say you can judge the book by this cover.
That book by its cover, and it's gorgeous. But no, what can people start doing? Like, what are the easy things?
Yeah, I love
don't
this
feel
question.
Overwhelming.
Yeah,
like work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. So the easy things, because I am a big fan of we get to have wins.
Yeah,
I want to win.
Yeah,
I know as a mama, you know, a midlife mama, a perimenopausal mama.
Yeah,
I would love all the wins. I would say the biggest win that I have experienced is going to be movement.
Yeah,
if I could bottle movement. And not so much movement for building, like protecting bone, building muscle, but also for regulating the nervous system. Like, I leverage movement for regulating my nervous system all of the time. And I find that stress is really the most insidious, cause of disease and chronic illness that often is so normalized that we don't even realize that we're living in it.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that I think can be really helpful. Another thing that I love is exercise snacks. So I'm a big proponent of exercise snacks. I talk about them all the time, and I prescribe them all of the time to my patients. And this is micro bursts of movement throughout your day. Now, I am still a big proponent of getting in the gym and lifting weights and you know, really
walks in
exactly. And not spending 15 minutes in the gym. I don't think we need 50 minutes. I think you can get a quality workout when you're intentional, 20 to 30 minutes. But even if you get that big, good workout in the morning or in the evening or whenever you do it, and then you sit all day, that's going to negate that workout or the gains that you're going to get from that workout. Living a sedentary life, which the majority of adults, unfortunately, that's how we operate in this world based on our jobs and kind of just the way life is ran today. That is negating. And so I'm a big proponent of how about we build in these micro movements? And it's mostly HIIT. It's high intensity interval training, but for 2 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
So it's jump squats, it's jack squats, it is jumping jacks, it's mountain climbers, it's going up and down your stairs with weights. It's something that's really getting your heart rate up. It's boosting your metabolic health, and it is helping you to feel more clarity. And so how these would work is, let's say after a meal, you can't get outside and take a walk. I don't know about you, but not every day does my son want to go and watch the sunset.
No.
He wants to build Legos.
Totally.
Yeah, he's 4.
On the living room floor.
Yeah, exactly. On the living room floor. So I am building Legos and I'm doing jump squats. And I'm building Legos and I'm doing jump squats. And I've put continuous glucose monitors on all of my patients. I wear one every quarter. And what is so fascinating about these exercise snacks, 3 to 5 times a day, especially after meals, talk about that postprandial support, that glucose support on the back end of a meal. You can really stabilize that blood sugar variability across the board. And when you're building in movement throughout the day, especially if it is jump squats or mountain climbers, something that you're really going to rev your heart rate, you're going to have pretty stable glucose variability throughout the entire day. It doesn't even have to be after meals. I mean, that's where the juice is really worth the squeeze, is going to be after meals, but punctuating your day with these exercise snacks after meetings, after a conference call. Those are going to be one of the best ways that you're going to improve your energy. You're going to improve your mental clarity. You're going to get deeper, more restful sleep. You're going to support your overall cardiometabolic health and your blood sugar. You're just going to feel more alive in your body. This is probably one of the simplest wins I can bring to the table that anyone can begin to implement.
I love that. And I think that Probably takes a little bit of a mental shift.
It is a little bit of a mental shift. Yes. Yes.
But I think once you kind of commit to it and then start doing it, it probably is just very natural.
Yeah. And I think, in the beginning, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, no, she didn't just say jump squats. Start with the walk around the block.
Yeah.
Start with walking for 5 minutes. And so, I really do believe that we're always one thought away. Around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, some days is when my brain will kind of hit a wall. And I'll want a snack. I'll want something. And this is from old school programming from when I was younger, where I would absolutely go and get a cappuccino and eat a Kind bar. And I was totally deregulating my blood sugar. And today, if I have that slump at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I head downstairs and I'm one thought. I can go to the kitchen, I can turn the right, or I can go straight out the door. And at this point in my life now, I've got my emotional support water. I've got my sneakers by the door, and I just go outside, even if it's just 3 to 5 minutes. I get outside, I get sunlight, I walk up and down my hill a couple of times, and then I get back to doing whatever I was doing. And so again, I think it's just more of a reframe, and it's really asking your body, like, what is my body really needing right now? Another big win I'm a big fan of, particularly for women in perimenopause, I prescribe this all the time, is really bookending your day with morning and evening rituals. So having a great sleep routine, having a metabolically boosting morning routine, but make it just yours. This isn't your partner's, this isn't with your kids. It's time for just yourself. We live in a time where this is such a messy middle, where we are taking care of potentially parents or maybe even older siblings. And for myself, my sister has a lot of health issues that I help support. We're taking care of children. And I just feel like, it's that sandwich generation where you just need time to yourself. 20 minutes. And if you can carve out 20 minutes at the beginning of your day, 20 minutes at the end of the day, I'm not saying it needs to be a lot of time. It just needs to be intentional time where you're really focused on you. Gosh, a lot can happen in the messy middle of that day that you can probably manage pretty well if you are able to just bookend your day. One, sleep being that sacred act that you really honor for yourself. And then the morning, just setting an intention of how you want the rest of your day to go. And I can talk about some of the rituals that I recommend to my patients all of the time. But there's something about bookending that day with time just for you that allows you to really take on the meat of your day.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so for the women that are listening and they're like, okay, I like that idea, but I don't sleep very well. What do you recommend to them?
Oral micronized progesterone. I would say Sleep Foundation is going to be really important. So do your best to go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. And I'm saying this as I've traveled from California to Austin yesterday. My sleep consistency, just because time zone changing wasn't super great, but I still clocked 100% of the sleep that I needed. So I really try to honor that. And that means I start my sleep routine about 30 minutes to 45 minutes before bed, with supplements, a really nice adaptogenic tea. My emotional support water comes with me upstairs. And once my door shuts, and just note that I'm sleep divorced, so I have my own room. Once the door shuts, unless it's $1 million meeting, concept, idea, or it's my son. You cannot disturb me. Like I am now this is my time. This is my zone to get ready. And I will get clear on the big rocks for the next day. So I just have clarity of mind there. And I'm reading a fiction book before bed.
I love that.
And I do have my little sleep stack supplements. And for every woman, it's going to be a little bit different. Magnesium is always a part of that. And, I cycle oral micronized progesterone right now because I will tell you that when my sleep is a little bit wonky, it's often in the luteal phase of my cycle. So I'll be fine 14 days out of the month and not so fine the other 14 days.
Rough right now in my luteal.
So I'd say some really natural sleep aids, but that sleep consistency is everything. And in the beginning, and find what sleep consistency works for you. For me and a lot of my patients, I say ideally lights are off by 10. And you're up around, whether it's 6 or 6:30, and that consistent go to bedtime and wake time, it's going to be a little bit rough in the beginning. It's, you're going to feel it, but by the 7th or 10th day, you're going to start feeling that sleep cue. Your body's going to let you know when to go to bed. Now, if that still isn't working and your foundation is still not getting the job done for you,
Mhm.
that's when we can bring in extra support.
Yeah.
Whether that's adaptogenic herbs or that
Mhm.
is a breath work or meditation,
Mhm.
or that is another type of sleep like supplement stack that helps
Yeah.
you to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And then I am a big fan of oral micronized
Yeah,
progesterone
I
for
am too.
patients.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely.
and if you're finding that you're doing really early morning wake times, like 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the
Yes.
morning, consider a compounded extended release
Yeah.
of oral micronized progesterone.
Yeah.
Again, it's going to be on the more expensive side.
Mhm.
Out besides, permetrium being so inexpensive
Right.
and very, I'm always torn between accessibility,
Right.
and so Permetrium is usually the thing you start with.
Yeah.
And then if it's not getting the job done or you're needing something a little bit more tailored,
Yeah.
we can always move over to compounded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, the kind of brain and mental load that we carry during perimenopause and how our brain changes and what we can do to support our brain, because it is a neuroendocrine experience. Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes. I would say that this is the one of 3 major neuroendocrine transitions that women can experience in their lifetime. The first one being puberty, right? And talk about a massive upgrade.
Yeah.
But we are pruning back a lot of neurons. We are
Right.
shifting energy, metabolism in the brain, the way that we're communicating with neurotransmitters. That second shift is going to be pregnancy and postpartum. So any mama will tell you on the back end of postpartum that who they were, they will never be that woman again,
Yeah.
right? Their brains are fully focused on keeping their children alive. I always tell my son that my number one job is to keep you safe.
Yeah.
Like no one's going to keep you safe like your mama is going to keep you safe.
Yeah.
And I'm hardwired for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that third transition, and probably the most profound, to me, it feels like a higher stakes game. I mean, being a mother is a high stakes game as well, no
Yes.
doubt. And I never want to dismiss that. But man, it is so destabilizing and equally can be very transformative, the neuroendocrine transition that happens in perimenopause.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that progesterone, testosterone, and estrogen are very important brain hormones. Yeah, they're not just reproductive hormones. This isn't bikini medicine.
Yeah.
These hormones are having a profound impact on the brain. Particularly if we want to just highlight estrogen for a second. Estrogen is the master CEO of a woman's brain.
Right.
And if you think about it, for 30 years, give or take, estrogen has shown up to the boardroom, to the table every single day, like a good CEO would.
Yeah.
And I always kind of liken it to having a CEO for 30 years, rhythmically cycling.
Yeah.
It's 24/7, obviously, but from 9 to 6 p.m. or 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., she shows up every day.
Yeah.
And then one day in perimenopause, doesn't Slack you, doesn't send you a text message, doesn't email you, doesn't show up until noon.
Yeah.
And then doesn't go home until like 10 p.m.
Yeah.
Then the next day, she shows up at 6 a.m. and goes home by 11 a.m.
Yeah.
And so it's this inconsistency
Right.
that the brain is trying to figure out what is going on. As a result, we see a big level of remodeling that the brain gets to go through in the perimenopause transition. But it's important to note that women are going to notice cognitive changes. So low mental energy, a lack of alertness, word recall issues. But and these are all separate, I think. Or even just remembering why you walked into a room.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've had a patient tell me that she charges into a room with intention and has no idea why she got there.
Oh, yeah.
And how frustrating that can be. This is where community becomes so important because I've had so many patients come to me. You talk about that fear of what they see that's happening to their moms, where they're seeing their moms experiencing signs of early dementia.
Yeah.
And then they start to forget
Right.
words in the middle of their sentences
Yes.
and wonder, am I experiencing?
Am I starting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is this early dementia? What is this? And then we've got the brain-related symptoms, right? The mood-related symptoms in terms of anxiety, depression.
Very high anxiety.
Yeah, 80%
See
of
that so
women
much.
will have mood-related symptoms. Up to 40% of women will be clinically diagnosed with anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
And gosh, I'm really mindful about the misdiagnosis of women in perimenopause for mental health issues, particularly being given an SSRI. Right now 66 million women are on an antidepressant here in the United States alone. That's a lot of women. And that window of vulnerability where we see women more prescribed antidepressant and anti-anxiety medications is going to be in our 40s, is going to be in perimenopause. And so I think it's important that women understand what's going on with their brains, that they know, again, to track those menstrual cycle changes and symptoms along with those menstrual cycle changes, but just to understand that that is what's happening, that they may experience rage, they may experience moments where they're having anxiety or sleep issues or mood swings or even just low stress tolerance. And, the things that we can do about it is one, let our doctors know. So advocate maybe for, hormone replacement support. I think we're moving into a time where we are open to the idea of giving women HRT in perimenopause, not waiting until very late perimenopause or menopause to prescribe HRT for women. I think the bookending our day, that is our time and our time alone, I think is really profound. Having strategies to regulate our nervous system. And I get that can be so hard when there are so many spinning plates in the air. Perimenopause in a lot of ways is almost laughable because why would our brains remodel without permission during a time where we're really having to hold it all together for everybody?
I know.
Right? All the priorities, the obligations, family members, the household, everything we're just holding all of that up. And so I have a lot of strategies for helping to regulate the nervous system, but I would say having a conversation with your doctor, asking if HRT is on the table as a practitioner, being open to bringing it up, saying, hey, could this be perimenopause? Could we be looking at your labs in a more meaningful way? Are you open to having this conversation around, supporting your brain with hormone replacement therapy? And then even supplementation can be really helpful. But at the crux of a lot of it, I think when it comes to the brain-related symptoms and changes, we need to really be looking at a woman's metabolic health as well. Like, how is her blood sugar? What is going on with inflammation? Is there anything that we can control from that standpoint?
Yeah, I agree. I saw a meme the other day that said that perimenopause is cougar puberty.
Yes.
So, yeah, and I think that it can hit you out of left field, and then you can feel like something's really wrong, and it can feel scary.
Oh, it can feel very scary. It was so scary for me when I felt so untethered. There were days, Alex, I was waking up and I felt like life was so insurmountable. I was so low. 3 days ago, my life hadn't changed. 3 days prior, everything was fine. I was able to handle it. And then, I would wake up with these low moods, or then I would wake up with these bouts of rage. And one of the biggest things that really, giving myself more time to regulate, understanding that I'm in this neuroendocrine transition. So offering myself a lot more extra grace, really, again, treating my sleep like it's the sacred act that it deserves to be. I feel like sleep was making or breaking me. And I think for so many of my patients the same way. Like, how are you supposed to have resilience for all the things that you are taking on when you only got 5 to 6 hours of sleep the night before? And then also ensuring that there was good, stable blood sugar, like that I wasn't on, that my patients or myself were not on a blood sugar roller coaster. We're chasing moods and cravings and just kind of crashing and burning throughout the day. So I think a lot of it is rooted in lifestyle medicine with optimizing with hormone with
specific
hormones,
biomarkers, depending on the specific needs of the patient. So okay, a lot of women in their 40s are kind of coming out of decades of diet culture.
Yes.
So how do you reconcile that with kind of best food approaches during this time with GLP-1s? There's just a lot of noise right now.
There's a lot of noise.
Yeah. And it's tricky.
It is very tricky. I'm pretty sure you and I know a lot of my patients come to me and say, I was brought up with Cosmo and Self magazine, and I was a cardio bunny. Like, you got on the Stairmaster. If you put on 5 pounds, you would just spend another 30 minutes on a treadmill, in the gym every single day, or you would calorie restrict. That was very much what we were told, and we saw it work. Right. We could get away with it. And so I think coming into perimenopause and menopause, or just midlife in general, we have to understand that being thin is not the goal. Right. It's about being metabolically resilient. It's about having good mitochondrial function. It's really about having good cellular energy. Yeah. And so the way that I talk about this in the book, in the second pillar, the first pillar is all about just understanding blood sugar as the ultimate biomarker for your cellular energy and longevity, because it's a biomarker that we can look at, that we can measure in real time. And so understanding what that means. What does it mean to have, a fasting glucose in the morning, above 85, or what does it mean to have an optimal blood glucose level? What does it mean to have blood sugar variability throughout the day? And how can we create more stable variability? The second pillar in the book is building a metabolically healthy meal. And so the way that I talk about it with my patients is, how do we want your future brain to function and work? Yeah. And how are we going to fuel your future brain? Yeah. When we think about food as being fuel and molecular information, we want to be thinking about it in a way that is going to reduce inflammation. It's going to give your brain the right type of energy. It's going to allow you to fire on all cylinders. Right. We also want to be building a meal that is supporting your overall metabolic health and energy. And so that's the through line that I am kind of talking about. And I'm really clear. I'm like, if you're working with me, if we're going to work together, I am thinking about your future health outcomes, not just mitigating symptoms today. And so the way that I think about building a metabolically healthy plate is, one, that we are balancing blood sugar. We're making sure that we're getting enough protein to build muscle. Right. Like, we need a substrate to actually build it. Yeah. But we also need to train. Yes. You can't just eat protein and expect to build muscle. Right. So just know that those two need to go hand in hand. Micronutrient and antioxidant rich foods. So I talk about aiming for 30 different types of plant foods every week. Now, if that feels like a lot, which I know I get, it does. Yeah. Look at how many you're aiming for right now, or you're doing. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 15. How can we move up by an extra 3 per week? Right. So start to gradually move that up. And we're talking legumes, seeds, nuts, obviously fruits and veggies. All of that counts in terms of plant foods. Prebiotic and probiotic rich foods. Yeah. So thinking about whether that's kimchi or it's, all the different types of fiber that we can get. Exactly. Yes. And then omegas. Yeah. So making sure that we're feeding our brain with good omegas, and there's lots, whether that's flaxseed or walnuts or salmon, fish, mackerel, making sure that we're getting robust omegas to reduce that brain inflammation and overall inflammation. Right. So that's kind of how I'm helping helping families to build their plates. Yeah. That we are building these metabolically healthy plates that are looking at gut microbiome diversity, balancing blood sugar, antioxidants and micronutrients. So filling those nutrient gaps and reducing inflammation. That's how I think about supporting women. Yeah. Do I think that GLP-1s can be supportive? Sure. But I think we need to be looking at it from a different lens of, like, are we protecting a woman's cardiometabolic health, and are we helping to reduce inflammation? Right. And so I personally always want to lean towards lifestyle medicine and how do we cook for ourselves and our family more than just bringing on medicine as a quick fix.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they can be very useful tools, but at the same time, if you're going to lose muscle mass, if you're going to become more sarcopenic, if you're going to increase your risk of osteoporosis because you're not fueling yourself correctly and you're not lifting, I think it can be very dangerous. Yeah, oh, absolutely. And so I wonder if we're going to see a wave of women in 10 years who maybe overdid it with GLP-1s, and then we're going to have some consequences. I don't know.
I'm sure we will. Yeah. And I think that's why it's also important to be looking at your DEXA scan. Yeah. To be, again, 100%. Looking at all this information and this body composition, looking at lean muscle, looking at visceral fat, looking at bone density. So especially if you're on a GLP-1, I think you should be working with a doctor who is looking at all of these things with you, so that you are not losing muscle. You're not becoming, you're not developing osteoporosis over time.
Yeah, I think I often see patients who just get it from people that
compounding
never,
pharmacist.
that
Yeah.
just never follow up,
Mhm.
don't give them an initial analysis and say, here's where you're starting. You know, we don't want you to lose all this lean muscle mass, you know, so nothing's being quantified. But with my patients, I'm like, okay, we've got to quantify everything.
We do. We have to
Yeah,
measure.
every 4 months. I
Test, don't
want to
guess.
see. Yeah.
Especially if the goal is to build resilience, if the goal is to protect their cellular energy,
Right.
I mean, we need to be looking at these biomarkers
Right.
across the board. Like even I just got biomarkers recently, and some of my lipids are a little bit out of range. Like my ApoB, my triglycerides, my HDL, those are pristine, but there's some of the particle lipids that I was like, don't love that. So we're making some shifts to my protocol, and I think again having that information is so valuable.
Yeah,
because
it's very empowering.
Yeah, and it allows me to have exactly. It allows me to, whether I'm looking at my patients' biomarkers or myself or family members, like, okay, how can we make tweaks? And it's often not, especially when you're almost dialed, it's just about making tweaks.
Right.
And the one thing I will say about perimenopause is who you are at 42 is not who you're going to be at 45 or 47 or 51. So if you're working with a provider and any provider that's listening as well, we have to be open to making pivots and continuing to tailor based on what is going on with that patient. And I think that's why perimenopause has been so tricky for providers, doctors, is because women, that's the one constant I can guarantee is that a woman's going to change, between 40 and 50.
Yeah. And I think it's one of these kind of, it's not, I wouldn't say it's a condition.
No, it's not a condition.
But I would say that it kind of gets lumped into things like fatigue and hair loss, which are, I think, in general, a lot of traditional doctors' like worst nightmare.
Yes.
Because it can be anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And that workup is really hard. And
yes.
usually they're like, I don't know. You're probably just stressed.
Yeah. It's often many things can be true, right? It's probably a multitude of things.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if we're talking about, whether it's body composition changes or, people ask me, why are we gaining weight in midlife? And yes, it's hormones.
Yeah.
But also it's probably the sleep that's not being met. It's, I know that we can eat an average of 22% more calories a day when we're not getting adequate sleep. Like, it's not one thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not a linear journey. For so many of us, for so many women in perimenopause, it's that, okay, life has become so taxing that we're not moving as much as we used to. We have so much going on that we are prioritizing the emails and, the to-do list and unloading the dishwasher over sleep.
Right.
Then estrogen and progesterone are declining, and we see an increase in bloating and inflammation and more insulin resistance, and we're laying down fat. I think the average woman gains 5 pounds of fat in peri, and up to 20% of women will gain 10 pounds of fat or more in perimenopause.
That's
and
rough.
so it's rough. Yeah, I mean, so it's a multitude of things that are happening for women. I wish I could say that we could just say, oh, it's just estrogen that's declining.
Yeah, it's everything. It's a web.
It's a
and
web.
I think that's what makes integrative medicine, functional medicine challenging maybe for, practitioners that don't do this work, because, we really honor and look at all of the different factors and inflection points that can affect someone's health. And so when you're in perimenopause, it's almost like that like there's so many inputs and so many inflection factors that are just kind of going awry. But they're all influencing each other, and then they're all connected too. So it's very hard to untangle that.
Yeah.
And it's different for every person.
Yeah. Nothing's operating in a silo at all. If you're having brain fog, it's probably connected not just to estrogen declining or progesterone not showing up in the luteal phase that month, but also to sleep issues or not being able to move, or maybe some blood sugar deregulation. And so it can be a multitude of those things.
Yeah.
I think we're quick to want to blame, oh, it's just this one thing.
I know.
And I will say that, with HRT in particular, like, it could be the light bulb movement, a moment that gets you motivated, that gets you out the door, that can help women kind of just move the needle towards creating more of that lifestyle medicine, like creating that foundation. As I started this conversation with you, how do we create wins for women so that they feel motivated? And so when I am working with a woman and I've developed a protocol for her, we get back on the phone for an hour or so, give or take, and we move through everything line by line, because at the end of the day, if I'm making a recommendation for, strength training in the gym 3 days a week, and her schedule there's no way
Right.
that that's going to happen. That doesn't support her. That doesn't
Right.
move her forward
Right.
in a meaningful way. That doesn't get us the results that she wants because it's unattainable.
Yeah.
And so how are we meeting our patients in a way that that's actually, it's going to challenge them a bit. It's going to shift the way
Right.
that they're operating in their life, but it's not going to be to the point where they're just like, I just can't
They just
do
can't
this.
do it. They just
Yeah.
check out.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. So for practitioners that are listening that are just kind of going to start working in the space of wellness and functional medicine, integrative medicine, and now they all have perimenopausal patients, possibly they're perimenopausal themselves, what would you tell them, from a clinician perspective, would be the best things to help their patients that they're currently working on, and then how to learn more?
I love this question.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we understand how to identify that it's perimenopause.
Yeah.
And I talked about that again. I think labs can give us a lot of meaningful information, especially when we're looking at them across the board. If I see, especially if I have a timeline of labs, like if I've had a patient for, a decade and I can see that at 35 and 36, 37, everything was fine. And then 42.
Oh, your lipids are different.
Yeah, exactly. Lipids are going up.
Yeah.
Highly sensitive CRP is
Right.
going up. Insulin went from, it was a 4 and now it's a 6.5.
Right.
And so, the triglyceride to HDL ratio is shifting and changing. Even if other things aren't happening, like she isn't really fully aware, I could even have a conversation of how things are shifting and changing and that maybe we're starting to see changes with perimenopause.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's about talking to your patient about tracking their cycle, tracking their symptoms, looking at those biomarkers in a more meaningful way, and being open to running a more full cardiovascular panel. We should be looking a little bit deeper than just the baseline labs.
Yeah.
I think that women deserve that.
Yeah.
And then talking based on if we do see creeping insulin or we do see creeping fasting blood sugar, maybe we're making a recommendation for a continuous glucose monitor so we can look at that data. Maybe we're making a recommendation for having women paying more close attention to their normals.
Right.
So their energy, their
Right.
mood, their sleep, their
Right.
cycle, so that they have a sense of what's going on with them. And then just starting with making recommendations around balancing blood sugar.
Right.
I think that's a great place to start. Talking about how are they implementing movement.
Right.
And if they're not able to get into the gym or get to the yoga class, how can they bring in these micro bursts of movement or just movement throughout the day?
Yeah.
I think those types of wins are extremely meaningful and are profound across when I look at whether it's biomarkers or I'm looking at DEXA scans or anything. Those are the things that tend to really move the needle for my patients.
Yeah, I would say so. I think data is very useful for patients. And then I think from a clinician perspective, starting with lifestyle is always, I think, number one, because you can move the needle so much faster. And then you want to create long-term habits, because the thing is that any condition, and when you're kind of in the season of perimenopause where you're transitioning and your body's changing so much, you have to change your lifestyle and your movement patterns, your eating patterns. This is like a forever thing, especially if you want to try and prevent cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis. Like you have to, like you said, reframe. And that all takes effort and work.
And I think that's the other thing. It's as a provider and a doctor, I am always reframing from my patients.
Yeah.
I want my patients to know that they can build more resilience.
Yeah.
They can balance their blood sugar. They can create good cellular energy. They can build bone and muscle. I think when women know that their doctors believe in them, that they can make these changes and that they are stepping into what could be the most powerful chapter of their lives, and that we're in it together, I think that shifts so much. So, I a lot of my patients, when I first start with them, some of them are only clocking 4,000 steps or less.
Oh, yeah.
They're not even in the gym.
Yeah.
And that's where they're at. And that's the case for you as well. And by the time I'm done working with a patient, that initial 90 days, usually they're clocking at least 7,500 steps.
That's great.
They are doing a few exercise snacks a day, maybe one or two.
Yeah.
And they're picking up the weights.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just one weight workout in their home.
Yeah.
They've got the Peloton app, they bought some weights on Amazon.
Yeah.
But we are moving forward.
Yeah.
And they're also, a big thing that again I focus on. A lot of my ladies are insulin resistant or pre-diabetic.
Yes.
And a big part of that journey for us is walking back the prediabetes,
Right.
obviously, and getting them back into a range where they are more insulin sensitive.
Yeah.
So those are the areas that I'm usually working on. But I find that, if I can make a meaningful change there, then we can make some really incredible, meaningful changes other places.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would say that is always a big needle mover for my patients is having very simple strategies to regulate their stress response system, just so that they feel like themselves again, that they feel like they've got some level of peace and calm in their bodies.
Yeah.
So those are the big needle movers that I'm usually implementing, besides remeasuring, retesting to see if we can get biomarkers to head back into normal range.
I think following trends is really important and powerful, but I agree with you. And a lot of it is, it's not, sometimes I tell my patients, it's not rocket science. It's just that we have to work on, strategy, kind of like you were saying earlier. It's more strategic steps. And it's not necessarily that it's, the hardest thing that you have to do. It's just that you've got to start doing some of these things consistently. And
it's
they really,
consistency.
and that they do really yield results, but you have to be consistent. And it's hard. It's something I, struggle with too. It's hard. It's hard when you, live a busy mom and then sedentary life. It's hard.
No, it is.
Yeah.
It is hard. I've been traveling a lot for the book.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I will, I feel like once you're clear on how you want to eat for your brain and your health, like for me, I've been doing it for so long. It feels like I know how to make those choices. Right. But it's the movement.
It's the movement.
I ask my patients all the time, what is the thing that's moving the needle for you the most? And it's always the movement. I would say, even with patients that have been on hormone replacement therapy, who are, doing supplement stacks, every supplement protocol out there. And movement is the thing that helps them to feel more alive.
So true. It's true.
Hands down.
Yeah, I actually never lifted weights until I turned 40. I'm going to turn 45 in a few months. And it just changed my brain. It changed everything for me. I mean, I felt so tired and dead and like mentally foggy before I started. So I'll tell my patients, I love it because the benefits of lifting weights beyond just like the physique part are so deep, because your immune system is being supported, your brain's being supported. It is just such an important thing to do. But again, I didn't know any women in my mom's generation that did that.
Yeah,
Very
especially
few.
Latina cultures in particular. Yeah. I grew up, I was lucky. My mama has always worked out. Yeah. And I played soccer, and I had a coach in high school when I was on the varsity soccer team my junior and senior year, who it was a requirement to be in the gym with the boys 3 days a week.
That's
and so
awesome.
I've been training since I was 16
That's
years
amazing.
old. And so I'm a gym rat more than anything, that I was not that I didn't do, I was a cardio bunny too, but I've always lifted weights, and I've been so deeply grateful because I have always felt the benefit of lifting, just feeling stronger, feeling those, all those good feel good chemicals. The endorphins, the feel good chemicals, and just getting it out on the gym floor. Like, that's one of my favorite ways to regulate. I had a pretty serious brain injury right when I was figuring out that I was in perimenopause. This was when I was training heavy and hard. I actually, I jumped into a metal,
oh no.
With high velocity. I was at a playground at Laguna Beach, and I had a hat on. I didn't know there was a metal bar a foot and a half, and I was jumping up to get to my son, who was 2.5 at the time. And I almost fell down this ladder, this shaft, because I had hit my head so hard. 10 days later, I got headbutt really hard, and my nose had broken, and I spiraled into this really bad post-concussion syndrome. Alex, I couldn't pick up weights for, I want to say 4 to 5 months. And I remember there were days where I would stare at my 30-pound weights with such longing. And I remember saying to myself, like, I am picking you back up. I promise. I'm just trying to get back to you. Yeah. And I was in intense brain treatments for about 90 days to turn the corner. And there were days where I didn't think that I was going to ever recover. I didn't know if I was going to be back to the version of myself
Right.
that I knew.
Right.
And at that time, I was very much a kind of in an acute type of situation, patient, and weights weren't the thing I could do.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things that were not on the table for
Right.
me. And the only thing I was having, I was having migraines 3 to 4 times a week.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
I was really struggling.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even able to drive a car for about a month.
Wow.
And so the one thing that I could do every day was walk.
Yeah.
So even in that time of really severe inflammation, brain inflammation, where I didn't have any capacity for almost anything at all,
right,
that was the one thing I could do. And so I know I've been there where so many of my patients have been, where they're faced with a pretty serious chronic disease, and they're trying to find the energy and capacity to just move their body.
Yes.
And this is from a woman who is like healed trauma and healed the mindset of like no pain, no gain.
Mm-hmm.
Like why walk when you could run?
Right.
Why be on the treadmill when you could be bench pressing?
Right.
That was always the through line for me. And so if you're looking for a starting place, do you feel like you don't even have enough energy to get off the couch, start small.
Totally.
Start with just up and down that block one time.
Yeah.
Then see if you can get around half the block.
Yeah.
And then work your way around the full block.
Yeah.
And, I think tracking steps is so important because we can measure. I clock at least 12,000 steps a day.
That's amazing.
And I look every day.
Yeah, I do look every day.
I look every day.
I'm trying to hit 8,000 every day right now.
Yeah. And so even though I know that I'm going to hit that number, I still look.
Yeah.
I want to know that I'm hitting that number, And so that would be the thing. Like I've been in the dark place of healing, in perimenopause.
Yeah.
And I just anchored. I anchored to fueling my brain.
Yeah.
I anchored to keeping my blood sugar stable. I anchored to moving my body by just walking.
Yeah.
And I could not tell you how much I longed to upgrade to another level of movement, but it wasn't available until it was.
Right.
Well,
a few minutes ago we were talking about nervous system regulation, and I'd love to know how, the audience could just start working on that today.
This is something I work on with my patients all of the time. Every woman, right, who comes to me and says, I just want you to know that I'm doing everything.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to know that I'm not lazy. And what I see often with a kind, loving heart is like, oh my goodness, my beautiful patient, she is massively deregulated, right?
Yeah.
She's chasing, trying to get well. So I always tell women to really pay attention and be aware.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes stress so insidious is that we don't even know that we're in it. We don't know that we're racing to the next thing, that we're living this life of rushing women syndrome.
Right.
And so I think awareness, whether it is you're finding yourself overreacting, it's like just like making quick decisions, like in reactive mode, or that everything's tight or constricting, like contracting, that's when I would say our bodies are looking for a state change. And so for some of us, that could be breath work. That could be the 4, 7, 8 breath, where we breathe in for 4, we hold for 7, we exhale for 8.
Yeah.
And it just helps to reset, the vagal tone and our respiratory rate. The next thing I would say for women who are like, breathing and meditating is not the vibe for me. It's shaking it out. It's moving.
Yeah.
It's taking an emotional lap.
Okay.
Just literally walking or like emotional lap in your living room, up and down your stairs.
I like that.
Maybe going outside. Just shaking that energy off, I think, is really helpful. And then also, if you know that this is already how you operate, you're just life is lifing and it's very busy and you easily go into that mode of being deregulated. I would say that send your brain safety signals. And that's where the morning and evening routine can be so important here. Because if you can set the tone for your morning, Louise Hayes has a really great quote that she used to share. She said, how you start your day is often how you live your day. And how you live your day is how you live your life. And I remember being like a Tasmanian devil with lip gloss on in the morning and wondered why the rest of my day was chaotic, So I think the way that we start our days, whether that is breath work or a gratitude practice or just having your emotional support water with you and just being clear on how you want your day to go.
Right.
Don't start the day being in Instagram or in your phone or in your email because though that's other people's demands and needs,
Right.
you've just given your day away to other people.
Yeah.
So make it about you.
Yeah.
Taking that time for you, getting yourself centered about what you want from your day, what you would love for you and your family, how you want to take care of you that day. And then the same thing is anchoring into the evening. The more that we can send our brain safety signals, letting our brain know that it's okay.
Right.
I have a mantra that I share with my patients all the time, and that is nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong.
Yeah.
You know, so often we're trying to solve
everything.
We're
All the things.
Girl, we're creating problems to solve problems. You know,
Yeah.
it's so.
If this happens and then this happens, how do I fix that?
Exactly. Yeah. And there's always a problem to solve. If you're
Yeah.
a mom and you run a business and you have a household, go downstairs or go into your living room, go into your kitchen,
Totally.
like talk to one of your children.
Yeah.
You've got problems to solve, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a constant. And so how we create, just really create space in that noise. For a lot of my patients, it's being outside.
Yeah.
It is going outside and looking 10 feet out.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, because often we're always at phones, computers, screens, where everything's right here in front of our face. Yeah. I intentionally, 2 times a day, I will go outside and just look 10 feet out. Whether it's flowers or it's a hummingbird, it's a butterfly, or it's the sky, and just allow myself to just free think or just be present. Yeah. And that will reset my nervous system.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love that.
That's a simple thing.
That's so simple. Yeah, because if you're on your computer or your phone all day, you're right. You're always kind of right here converging and you're not really looking out or even looking up.
Or looking up, yeah. And if you are really in that fight, freeze, moment where you're stuck, I would I always say, look around the room and name 5 things that you know are true. So that's a wall. That's my computer. Right. That's the clock. Right. I can see, and so just to kind of bring that prefrontal cortex back online. Yeah. And then once you've kind of reacquainted yourself with the facts, get up and kind of shake that off.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, this has been amazing. You want to let the audience know how to find more info about you, where they can get your book. Yes. They want to work with you. Let everyone know all the things.
So the book is available everywhere books are sold. If you're like me and you're a perimenopausal mama listening to this, or you're a doctor and you're a perimenopause, whatever, I would say, it's available on Audible. Yeah. It's available on audiobook. I listen
2x speed.
Yes, 2x speed always. Gosh, I feel so seen right now. It's an ebook, hardcover, however you love to get it. But the bonus is, which is drmariza.com/book. I have exercise snack videos. Oh, cool. I have beginner workout videos, intermediate workout videos. And the beginner workout videos, it's a body weight workout. Nice. You don't need any equipment at all. And it's 20 minutes. Get it done. Like I'm about being efficient, about your time. There are over 75 recipes to build metabolically healthy meals for you and your family. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, even desserts and snacks. Although I'm a big fan of just 3-meal magic, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yep. And there is symptom trackers, comprehensive lab guides with ranges, basically everything a woman would need to start creating wins, to start making those changes, awesome. So that they can feel like a different version of themselves in about 10 days.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.